Hey Pat,
How are you?
good. How you doing?
Okay, good. You can hear me.
No, I can hear you loud and clear. You sound good. Where are you, buddy? Where are you in the universe?
I'm in my home in Etobicoke,
You know what? And now I'm mad you're not here. What? You don't have to give me specifics, but what part of the borough of Etobicoke are we talking about?
the very southwest corner.
Okay. So I'm recording the video, so afterwards we'll share addresses because I'm in the pretty close to the southwest corner.
Oh, okay.
So I'm in New Toronto, but I guess you're in Long Branch.
Yeah, we're in Long Branch. Yeah.
Okay, your neighbor to the east here in New Toronto. Nice to meet you.
You too, as well?
You're cool if we just dive right into this.
Sure.
Amazing. Okay, anything for a fellow Etobicokean. Hey, what do you call Etobicoker, Etobicokean? What do you think the proper term is?
Etobicokean, silent K.
Yeah, that K throws off a lot of well-meaning people.
Okay. Try and
All
get
right.
them to spell it in the U.S.
I've given up with that whole country. That's another podcast, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Pat, after 55 years, 19 albums, and countless awards, the legendary Downchild Blues Band is on their farewell tour, performing November 12 and 13 at Hughes Room Live. It's the end of an era. Please, why is Downchild shutting it down? Why are they calling it quits after 5 decades?
Well, nobody's young anymore by any means. Some of the guys are pushing the age of 80, and it just gets tougher as you get older to do it. Right?
So it's just time to wrap up the live performing before you're shouting out Ridley Funeral Home.
Yeah, that's pretty well it. But all of us, most of us, got the what I guess I would call the sidemen in Downchild. We play in a bunch of different bands, and we'll continue to do that.
So now I just saw yesterday. I saw Bruce Springsteen in the E Street Band.
Right?
Now Bruce is 75, but I mean this guy he goes hard for 3 hours. Okay, I don't know if I saw him take a sip of water.
He doesn't.
It's unbelievable. Like my mind was blown. My first ever time seeing him live. Have you seen him live?
No, I never
Okay.
got the chance to see him live. No.
Well, this was my first go, and I'm still kind of like in shock by it was unbelievable, like so inspiring. But he's called the boss for a reason, right? So it doesn't matter if Max Weinberg wants to keep going. Bruce decides when the band is done. Is there any similar nature in Downchild Blues Band? Like maybe Pat wants to keep going, but he's not the boss.
No, I wouldn't say that type of situation exists in Downchild. I
I'm
mean,
trying.
Springsteen is notorious for doing concerts like 4 hours and 4.5 hours sometimes. Right?
Well, last night he started late, which is very rare for him because he's
Yeah.
usually pretty punctual. But I was worried for a moment when we hit. It was 11:45 or something, and I remember the last GO train to Mimico Station runs at like 12:17 or something.
Right.
And I was like, oh, a 7:30 start. I didn't think I'd have to worry about catching the last train to Mimico at 12:17.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's different days now for us. In the old days, we'd be playing clubs in the U.S. and you'd be doing 3 1-hour sets, and you'd be playing till 3 in the morning sometimes. You know. So
But
these days for us, it's mainly theater performances, and they are generally speaking 90-minute sets.
so we have a band that's 55 years old, but you, Pat, have not been in the band for 55 years.
No, I joined Downchild in June of 1985.
So maybe we start off with just a little history of the band for those who maybe are ignorant, and then we can dive into like who you are and your role in it all. But Donnie Walsh, so Donnie Walsh, who I'm told does not do press, is that true? Because if I find out that's a lie, I'll be so angry.
No, no, that is correct. Yeah.
Okay. So Donnie Walsh sends in Pat Carey as his proxy.
There you go. Well, I guess with my almost 40 years with the band,
Right.
I know quite a bit of what was going on. So
I forget 1985 was almost 40 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
It's, it's insane. Okay, so Downchild's Blues. I always want to put an S on that. The Downchild Blues Band forms in 1969, and it's Donnie Walsh, of course, still with the band, and his brother. I mean, what do you know about the history of this band?
Well, yeah, the band started with Donnie and his brother Hawk, Jim Milne on bass, I believe Cash Wall on drums, and Dave Woodward on saxophone. And Dave went on to play with Powder Blues Band when he moved to Vancouver. And Nat Abraham, I believe, was the other sax player. So it was the only rhythm was guitar, no piano in those days.
And then one of the great stories, and I'd love to hear it from an actual member of the band. That's you, Pat, not me, that's for sure. But the Blues Brothers. Okay, I'm sure you're sick of talking about this. Every time you do an interview to promote this farewell tour, they want to talk about Dan Aykroyd and the Blues Brothers. But can you, for the record, just share with us, how does the Downchild Blues Band influence Dan Aykroyd's Blues Brothers?
Well, in the 70s in Toronto, Dan was running what was called the Booze Can at the time, which is an after-hours club on Queen Street. And he had met John Belushi through Second City. And at that time, Dan was working at Second City in Toronto. So they were at his Booze Can one night, and Dan put on Downchild Blues Band, the Straight Up album. And at that time, John Belushi was really, he was into heavy metal. So he heard Shotgun Blues and he went, "What is that? I got to sing that." So that's basically how musically he became turned on to blues, was through Dan.
So it's safe to say no Downchild, no Blues Brothers.
Precise. Yeah, that is totally correct.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And do you know where the band name comes from? Where does Downchild Blues Band, where does that Downchild come from?
There was a song by Sonny Boy Williamson entitled Mr. Downchild, and that's where Donnie took the name from. Sonny Boy was a famous Chicago blues harmonica player and a huge influence on Donnie and his playing.
I read a quote from Donnie. He says, over this 55-year history of the band, which sadly is coming to an end, but we'll get back to that. But Donnie Walsh says there's been over 120 musicians that have played with Downchild or are associated with Downchild since it was founded in 1969.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, when I joined the band at 85, that was still going on. Guys would come and go, in and out, in and out. But basically in 1990, when Chuck Jackson joined the band as lead vocalist, yeah, the band stayed pretty well the same guys, really, until a few years ago when our drummer Mike Fitzpatrick retired from music. And then Jim Casson came back in the band, who had been in the band in the 90s before.
So if I go to Hugh's room, shout out to FOTM Jane Harbury. I have to shout her out when I talk about Hugh's room. But right, if I go to Hugh's room for this final, I might have to go to both nights. So November 12 and 13.
Yep.
But there can't be any tickets left. Are there any tickets left?
I heard there was a few tickets left for the 12th. The 13th's been sold out for a few weeks.
Don't add a show on the 14th, because that's also a move that'll tick me off if you do that. That's the move, right? You do we're doing 2 shows, final shows in your city, and then you add a third, and all the eager beavers who bought tickets to the second show have to now buy tickets for the third show.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm giving you marketing advice, but
yeah, there you go.
Only
I just wanted to point out with Dan Aykroyd, like Dan has been a major supporter of blues music around the world, and his syndicated blues radio show that he had and everything he's ever done in the Blues Brothers. And he's always said that without Downchild, there wouldn't have ever been a Blues Brothers. But the back effect was it gave Downchild the stamina, to keep going for all those years too. But, regardless of that, Donnie has consistently written original music for the entire time period up until our last original CD, which was 2017. Because the album after that was live at the Toronto Jazz Festival.
So no resting on your laurels.
No.
You can't just be, nostalgia tour playing I've Got Everything I Need. Or,
yeah.
Shotgun Blues or whatever.
Yeah, which of course are in the show. But we've picked out tunes that expand the entire time frame of Downchild.
They better be in the show. Can you imagine you go see the final show and Flip, Flop, and Fly is not performed? There'll be a riot.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Pat. So now I remembered where I was going there. So if I go see the shows at Hughes Room, who is in the band today? Who will I see on stage with Downchild Blues Band?
The band today is Jim Casson, as I mentioned, on drums. And Jimmy had been in the band in the 90s, came back when Mike Fitzpatrick retired, which I guess was just after COVID. So 2021. Gary Kendall on bass. And Gary sort of has the same, he was in the band in the 1970s, rejoined the band in 1994. And Gary's been with us ever since that time. Tyler Urema on piano. Tyler's a great piano player, singer, leader of his own with his own band. Tyler Urema on the rhythm. Myself on saxophone. Peter Jeffrey on trumpet. And Peter has been on every Downchild record since 1989.
Wow.
And basically, he would do all the big shows if we did Massey Hall or things like that. But for the last couple of years, he's been doing all the shows with Downchild. And of course, Donnie Walsh on slide guitar, and harmonica. And Chuck Jackson, who was our lead vocalist and a harmonica player. And Chuck joined the band in 1990.
Some sad news for Chuck recently. His brother, Mike Bullard, passed away.
Yeah, exactly. Very sad. Very sad. And I should mention, too, that quite a number of songs in Downchild's repertoire are written by Chuck as well.
Very interesting. Now, can you name all 120 musicians? I'll go for a bike ride and come right back.
That would be tough to do.
Okay, so I'm going to get... Sorry, go ahead.
Even just the sax players would be hard to do.
I will say of course, the legendary sax player for the E Street Band was Clarence Clemens, who passed away, but his nephew, Jake Clemens, now plays the role. And Jake, like yourself now, okay, because you're now an FOTM, that means friend of Toronto Mike. You've made your Toronto Mike debut here today. And I can tell you that Jake Clemens has been on the program as well.
Oh, excellent. Fabulous. Yeah.
I'm collecting all the sax players.
Well, Clarence was a huge influence on everybody. You know, he had such a sound, such a tone, and he had a way of playing that made statements. He was a fabulous player. And
Larger than life, right?
Yeah, and I hear Jake's continuing on with that, so that's great.
No, Jake's doing a great job. It was a fun seeing him last night. Now, let's talk about you a bit here, and then we'll find out how you end up in the Downchild Blues Band. It seems to me like on this program lately, there's been a lot of Manitoba content. Only because Chantal Kreviazek was just here.
Right.
I'm always shouting out this podcast from Moneris called Yes, We Are Open, and Al Grego, who hosts it, he went to Winnipeg to collect all the stories for most of the stories for season 7. And there's also, we did an episode about with a gentleman who wrote a book on the Guess Who. He's from Winnipeg. His name is Robert Lawson. I think there's been a lot of Manitoba content lately, and this is no exception because you're a Manitoba guy.
Absolutely, yeah. I was born in the Pas, Manitoba, went to high school in Thompson, Manitoba, and went to university in Winnipeg.
Okay, I'm checking with Danny Graves from The Watchman. He said that qualifies. You're definitely a Manitoba man.
That's for sure, especially being from the north.
My goodness, it's a province I haven't visited yet, and I would like to.
Yeah. Go in the summer, of course.
I would. You know, Torontonians always hear about these like mosquitoes the size of like small airplanes.
Yeah, I was going to say either it's cold or it's mosquito season. So.
Sounds like a beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
All right, so go ahead.
The cool thing about Winnipeg, when I started at University of Manitoba when I was 17 years old, and in the city of Winnipeg at the time, there was 3 full-time big bands that played all over the city. Every rock band played original music, and there was at least 15 clubs that you could play for a week at a time without repeating a club. Had a very active music scene, the Winnipeg Symphony, the Rainbow Stage Theater. It was just incredible, the amount of stuff going on in Winnipeg at that time.
Much more than the Guess Who.
Yes.
Those 3 bands. Can you name those 3 bands?
The 3?
Oh, I thought I heard you say there were 3 bands playing original music, or no?
Oh, no, 3 big bands.
Three big bands. Okay,
Yeah,
can you name them?
yeah. The Jimmy King Orchestra,
Okay.
the Ron Paley Big Band, and the Carey Big Band.
Okay, good. See, I'm
So, you're talking about bands with 20 people in them. You
right.
know, for a city the size of Winnipeg, that's, it's unheard of. And in Toronto, there might be two big bands that perform regularly at this time. Right?
Can you name them?
Yeah, the John McLeod Rex Orchestra, which is a great, great big band. The Whitney Smith Steam Band is another one. And there's smaller versions of those things too. The Monarch Tavern seems to be doing a lot of that kind of stuff, which is cool.
Very interesting. See, I like to learn on these programs, so you're educating me. Very interesting. Now, educate me. I'm gonna get you, and I hope I don't butcher the name of this band. I'm gonna call this band Rocky Roulette.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's tough to mess it up, right?
Yeah.
Maybe give me a little taste. Like, when did you realize you had this gift and you wanted to be in music and be a musician? And then tell us a little bit about joining Rocky Roulette.
Yeah, I mean, my father was a doctor, but he loved music and he played piano and drums and violin. My mom played piano. All my brothers and sisters played piano. My sister played flute. At any house party in the PA, there'd always be a little combo of guys playing live music and people around singing and dancing. So it was constantly around me. And then it was when I was 13, my father took me to see Count Basie in Winnipeg. And Eddie Lockjaw Davis was playing sax at the time. And it just, at the age of 13, I was just blown away. And I went, I want to do that. Because Eddie went out front to the front of the stage. He did about 20 passes on a blues. He didn't repeat like one kind of idea. He just kept coming up with new ideas and stuff. Then he turned around, he threw his sax up in the air, and he grabbed it and sat back down. And I went, I want to be that guy. So that's where that started. And when I was 17, that's when I went to University of Manitoba into the music program there. Unfortunately, in Winnipeg at the time, there was no jazz or program. And at the time, there was one blues band in the whole city of Winnipeg at the time. So, I was playing everything, rhythm and blues, jazz, playing weddings, playing Rainbow Theater. And then I joined Rocky Roulette's band. And Rocky started as basically a rhythm and blues cover band is the way it started. And that evolved where he started writing a bunch of original music. So in 1982, we won the Trans-Canada Rock Contest.
Okay, tell me a little bit about this, because I know this will secure you a recording session with Bob Ezrin, which is amazing, okay?
Yeah. So
what exactly was the Trans-Canada Rock Contest?
It was I can't remember if it was actually sponsored by A&M Records, but I think it was. And they would get the recordings, they would pick the winner for Canada, and then you would get 24 hours with Bob Ezrin and his engineer Ringo. So they flew to Winnipeg. We had exactly 24 hours to do in those days a 45 record, an A and B side. And it was amazing to watch those two guys work, because in those days nothing was digital, obviously. So Bob and Ringo would be cutting the master tape all the time, and we're like, oh my god, what are they doing over there? And it was just amazing. They'd splice and cut, and it was just an incredible experience at the time.
Amazing. So I can listen to these recordings.
They're hard to find. There's a bunch of live stuff on YouTube, because we did a bunch of stuff for CBC at the time.
Okay.
But the actual recordings themselves, I have the original, but I haven't seen it anywhere.
Do you have it digitized?
No.
Okay, then I was gonna. Next step would be get that to me, and I'll splice it into this episode of Toronto Mic'd. But you don't have it digitized.
No, I don't believe so. No, never
is
did.
It good?
Oh, it's amazing.
No, I believe it. I want to hear it. I do want to hear it.
In 1982, it was part of the New Wave movement.
Yeah.
So like that band had two female vocalists, Rocky singing, plus a 5-piece band behind them.
Yeah, could you compare it to a band? I'm thinking, like, does it sound like Blondie? What do I hear in my head?
No, less poppy than Blondie. It's really.
Is it Spoons? What are we hearing here?
maybe a bit of the Cars.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but serious Cars.
Yeah. Yeah. Serious Cars. Okay. Love it very much. Okay. Now, while you're a member of Rocky Roulette, uh, you guys open for a reunion of the Guess Who.
Yes, yeah, in Kenora, Ontario.
So tell me a little bit about that. Shout out to Robert Lawson, who fact checks the appearances on Toronto Mike of Randy Bachman, and
Right.
I just had Tim Bovaconti just came over last week, I want to say,
Oh
and
yeah.
he's the current guitarist for Cummings,
Right.
Burton Cummings. So I just would love to hear a little bit of like how that went, opening for the Guess Who in their reunion tour.
All I can really remember is driving from Winnipeg to Kenora in one of the worst thunderstorm rainstorms I'd ever seen in my life. It just like poured. You can see like 6 inches in front of you. But the it was a beautiful outdoor venue. We did the opening set. Guess Who sounded amazing, of course.
Well, there must have been something. I would only assume that the Guess Who were a bit of a role model for you guys, I would guess, coming up in Winnipeg.
Yeah, and different generation, of course, because the Guess Who started in the '60s, obviously. So
Yeah.
different style of music, totally. But yes, a huge
Just like an example of, oh, look, a band from Winnipeg can have a #1 hit on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. But
And
a lot of
especially,
other bands out of Winnipeg, Queen City Kids, Crocus. I don't know. Remember if you remember the band Crocus? Graham Shaw and the Sincere Serenaders.
I got a Graham Shaw album right here. Huh?
Ah,
Yeah, here you go. Here's so. All right, so there is the Sincere Serenaders in
there
my.
it is.
I
That's
see
great.
the first song on side one. The first song is Jolene. So,
Oh, yeah, that was a great song. Yeah.
and the song I have it for is the song that City TV here used back in the good old days of when they were everywhere. Is Pentatus. I always say that wrong. Pentatus,
Yeah.
potato. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so what I did read also is at this point, are you doing work with like jingles and different radio and television show audio elements at this point?
Just before you put that away,
Yeah.
that record.
It's coming back,
So
Pat. Don't worry.
Susan Lethbridge,
Yeah.
the blonde vocalist.
Yeah.
Susan was in Rocky Roulette.
You know what? You just blew my mind. There you go. My brains are all over the walls right now. That's like, what were the odds that would be just kind of staring at me as you talked? I mean, just a gift from Retro Ontario.
Yeah.
And here it is, Graham Shaw. And it's just Graham Shaw looking his Graham Shawiest.
Yeah.
And there's I'm just reading the back. Yeah, there she is. So
Yeah.
there you
And
go. Small world.
I worked with Alana Zaramba millions of times doing various gigs around the city, and it was all the same time period.
Did you have good manners in the 1980s?
Uh, don't remember a lot of the 1980s, put it that way.
If you can remember the 80s, you weren't there.
Exactly.
Shout out to Steve Anthony.
And we were doing tons of traveling in those days too. We'd play all over Western Canada. We played in Toronto, and it was a big move. And what sort of ended Rocky was A&M Records wanted to sign Rocky and the two girls, but they didn't want to take the band. They wanted to use the Toronto studio guys to play on the recordings, and Rocky actually turned it down.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a noble of Rocky.
Yeah, yeah. But
I was going to say the trick would be you just go and become the studio musician they use.
Yeah. But you would have had to have been here for a long time before that would ever happen.
But you did work many years as a studio musician.
Yes, I've done tons of studio recordings, jingles, anything you can imagine over the years.
Now, if I interrupted you, you were going somewhere. Go back to that. But I was going to ask you if you could name a jingle I might know. I'm just, you always find out, that Pizza Nova jingle that you heard 100,000 times. Oh, I played on that or whatever. Like, is there any jingle you are featured on that I would know?
I don't know if you'd remember, but there was a jingle for Blue Mountain Resort that George Oliver had written and put together, and I played sax on that. But we're talking about 30 years ago.
But I'm of an age where I remember 30 years ago. I consumed a lot of media 30 years ago.
Okay.
Can you hum a few bars?
No.
No, that's too much here. Okay, so you were performing a lot with George Oliver in the Gangbuster.
Yeah, when I first moved to Toronto, my first gig was with Donnie's brother, Hawk Walsh.
Right.
Because actually, my first gig was actually with Tony Flame and the Dukes, and Tony was one of the lead singers of Downchild as well. Then I joined Hawk's band, and then I joined George Oliver and Gangbuster, and we were playing at the Blue Note on Peaches on Paris. That used to be that club, but on Paris Avenue. And Donnie saw me play with his brother, and he had asked me to join Downchild in 1984, but it was right around New Year's Eve, and I was doing a tour of Israel, Cyprus, and Germany with a band out of Winnipeg. So I couldn't do that, but I said, definitely interested in the future. And then June of 85. But also, I remember George Oliver asking me at the time, he said, because, I was subbing out to do Downchild gigs, and he was, you got to make a choice. Are you going to stay with me or go with Downchild? And I said, well, George, I have to go with Downchild. We're, putting out records and playing original material, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Because that was my first recording in Toronto was with Donnie. It's been so long.
Wow. Goodness gracious. I'm just glancing at all these awards you've won through the years. Like you've won, and I'm just going to assume, in the spirit of A Christmas Story, that this is a prestigious award. Okay.
Okay.
It's not a leg lamp. Okay. Maple Blues Award. You've won multiple of these. Where are these Maple Blues Awards right now? Do you have them on display?
I don't know if you'll be able to see, but I actually do. Let's see.
I'm going to see if I can see.
We got Maple Blues Awards and a Juno Award.
What's the Juno for?
That was for Downchild's album, Can You Hear the Music? Are you able?
Yeah, that was probably 92 or something like that, or?
No, that was in the 2000s.
2000s, okay.
Probably 2011, maybe.
Okay.
With all the Maple Blues Awards.
Wow.
A bunch of teaching awards that I won. A Jazz Report Award that Downchild won in the 90s. And the Juno.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be recognized. You're doing it, I'm sure you're doing it for love of the art, but to be recognized like that, it just must feel good.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Makes it, know that you're doing the right thing.
Well, even, you don't need to win awards, though. I say that as a podcaster who never wins any awards, but I get to talk to interesting people like you. Although I'm, just to be full disclosure here, usually I'm like, oh, Pat Carey's in, like, I don't know, he's in Winnipeg or something. So that's a long drive to New Toronto. Of course, we got to do this on Zoom. But I'm just thinking about you in Long Branch and wondering how come we're not in the same room right now.
Right. The question probably never got asked.
Well, I know I asked a certain person we know and love, definitely asked for, but here we are. So let's make the most of it. So tell me about the Jazz Navigators.
Yeah, that's as I say, in Winnipeg, there was so much different music going on. I was playing with Ron Paley, and Ron Paley is the king of Winnipeg jazz. And jazz music, from the time I saw Count Basie, that was always in my heart. And I'm playing in a blues band, so it seemed, to certain people, well, why is he trying to put out a jazz record? Well, was my true love. So I put out 2 albums with the Jazz Navigators. And then in 2008, one thing I've always loved is the B3 classic trios with saxophone, guys like Jimmy McGriff, Groove Holmes, Joey DeFrancesco in the modern age. So I went down to New York City. Jake Langley was living in New York at the time, so Jake produced it for me. And that was called Jumpin' in Jersey. So that was more blues influenced jazz, which is, that's got a special place in my heart as well.
Geez, and you've performed with some heavyweights. Maybe shout out some, like, who are some of these legends, many no longer with us, sadly, but some of these legends that you performed with?
Well, in Winnipeg, with the Winnipeg Symphony, they would augment the symphony by bringing in a big band with the symphony. So, I mean, I was 19 years old playing third alto in the big band, and we backed up Tony Bennett, Lionel Hampton, Sarah Vaughan. It was just, Mel Torme was another one.
Wow.
So at the age of 19, I was like, oh my God, this is just incredible. Then the funniest one I did was I backed up Rodney Dangerfield. So the band for him was an upright piano, drums, and saxophone. And that was it.
But okay, so is this? I did have a cassette of Rodney Dangerfield where he had I remember there was a cut on that called Rappin' Ronnie.
Oh yeah,
Rappin' Rodney. Sorry, Rappin' Ronnie. Yeah. I think is the Simpsons parody where Ronald Reagan has.
Right.
But Rappin' Rodney definitely. He just does his "I got no respect at all" and whatever, and it's all like his rap song. But what album is Rodney Dangerfield recording with you playing?
This was just a live concert at the Winnipeg Concert Hall.
Okay.
And he did 2 shows that night, both sold out, of course. But, when he first came on stage, he came out in the bathrobe and the shoes with the socks and garters. And we're going, well, this is going to be funny. Well, all comedians, if they're in the biz, they're total pros. So it wasn't, the rehearsals were, this is what we're doing. This is how it goes. You do this, you do that, you do that. Very matter of fact and very professional. And Dan Aykroyd is the same way as well. Always a total pro.
And he introduced the Tragically Hip on Saturday Night Live, but he never got Downchild Blues Band on Saturday Night Live, right?
No, that never happened.
It's not too late, though. It's almost too late, though. We're close to it being too late, is what I'm saying here.
But, Dan has been such a great supporter over the years. I played with him live on stage, I don't know, 30 times.
Wow.
And always a total pro and great to be around.
All right. And speaking of legends, we could talk about Leslie Gore and, Buddy Guy and all these legends, but Colin James.
Yep.
So what's your relationship like with Colin James?
Colin has been our guest on a number of occasions. I think the first time he was a guest with us, we were playing the Notodden Blues Festival in Norway. So we went over and Colin was the guest with us for that show. So that's how that kind of started. And then, he's been our guest at Massey Hall. He's been our guest out west on a number of occasions. And the funniest one I ever did with Colin, it was a halftime show at the Argonauts game. And there was no charts and it was pre-recorded. So there's 3 of us horn players. We're just kind of standing there, not really knowing what to do. Then on the Jumbotron, there's a shot where this big horn shot comes on the recording, like, meow, and the 3 of us are standing there.
That's great. Yeah. All right. I just did a little digging here because I saw your Juno and I wonder why you don't have 3. Like, because so Downchild wins Best Roots or Traditional Album in 1992. That's what got me confused. Saturday Night Blues.
Right. Yeah.
And then an 06 Album of the Year for Let It Loose. Oh, that's just you. That's not Downchild. Yeah. Okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah,
okay.
That's me with Kenny Blues Boss Wayne.
So, but did you get one yourself, or you didn't? They made you buy one or something?
Yeah, I would have had to have bought it. Yeah.
But then 2014, I guess that's the Juno you showed me, right? Is for Can You Hear the Music?
Yeah.
Okay, and I won't even this will take too long if I run down all the Maple Blues Award. But let's just say they should rename the Horn Player of the Year after you.
There's been enough of those. And with Downchild, we won for Artist of the Year. Chuck Jackson's won multiple times as Vocalist of the Year. Gary Kendall, Bassist of the Year. Jim Casson, Drummer of the Year. And for various recordings that we've done, Album of the Year, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, and I will shout out the album Gone Fishing because my buddy Chris and I loved that album cover.
Oh.
It's like a big deal. In '89, we were like, we love this album. We just love the album cover. I think he bought a copy just for the album cover.
Did he?
That's it. And for those who haven't seen it, you can Google it, but it's an attractive topless woman holding a fish.
Yeah.
What's not to love about that?
Yeah. Well, Now Magazine compared the cover to Smell the Glove.
But for a 14-year-old, we thought it was pretty sophisticated stuff. There, to be honest. Okay, so now back to where we started, which is that you guys are hanging it up. So, like, what was there a meeting? And somebody said, "I'm tired," and someone said, "I'm tired too." And then you said, "Well, let's call it after this farewell tour." Like, can you give us a little more insight into like how you guys decide that this will be it for the Downchild Blues Band?
Yeah, I mean, it's a decision that obviously that Donnie had to come to because he's the leader of the band. So basically, his decision, and that's basically it for that.
And Donnie's not adverse to making the tough decisions. The man did fire his brother from the band.
Exactly, and that's kind of Donnie became the leader at Downchild because nobody else wanted to.
Right.
So it's sort of the way it started.
And you got to respect the man because he's the boss, okay? And he also refuses to do media. Meanwhile, Howard Stern is talking to Bruce Springsteen, but I like this Donnie policy. I'm not talking to Toronto Mike. I'm not talking to Ian Hanno Mansbridge. I'm not talking to Steve Paikin. I'm not talking.
That's Donnie. But the other thing with Donnie is the amount of songs the man has written is just incredible. And on I believe it was the top 200 songs ever in Canada, Everything I Need Almost is on that list, and it's the only blues song.
No, it's a tremendous song. Yeah. And I'd be remiss because listeners of this program, typically Gen Xers who listen to Toronto radio growing up, and we got to shout out the Q107 Toronto Music Awards because you guys did win Best Toronto Blues Group in 1989.
Yes, we did. And the Been So Long album, there was actually a song called Don't Mind Dying that actually was played on Q107 all the time. So that was very cool in those days.
No, absolutely. Shout out to the Mighty Q. Yeah. So we're calling it quits after 5 decades. Maybe on our way out, a highlight or two, because you've been with the band since 1985. Maybe not since day one, but that's an awful long time. Like, what will you miss the most about being in the legendary Downchild Blues Band?
Well, we've had so many incredible opportunities and experiences. We played in Europe. We played in Scandinavia. We've toured all over. The only place I haven't played in Canada is the Yukon. We've toured from Maine to Key West, Florida 30 times, as far west over as Indianapolis, 30 times as well. But, it's all those special moments like opening for B.B. King at Massey Hall. That's a very fond memory. Another fond memory is playing in Calgary, actually, in this, I think about 1987. And it was Downchild Blues Band with the Otis Rush Band and Dr. John. Wow. And the highlight for the encore was we got to play with Dr. John and Otis Rush. Buddy Guy's been a huge friend of the band for years. We played Buddy Guy's in Chicago. Things like that they're priceless.
But Buddy Guy's still touring, right?
Yeah, this was supposed to be his last tour last year, but he's still going. But
think about that, Pat. You guys are hanging it up before Buddy Guy.
Yep. I know, but he's amazing.
Oh, well, you guys are amazing. It's not too late to play the Yukon. Why not collect them all? Like, I feel like, no, you guys gotta do your farewell show at the Yukon and then call it quits.
There you go.
All right, quick question, because I've been wondering this since I saw Bruce Springsteen last night. So he performed his excellent cover of Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Right.
But it was November 6th. So just straight up, Pat, I want the real talk here. Isn't that too early to play Santa Claus is Coming to Town?
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah. With Downchild, we've never done that kind of thing regardless. So.
No, you're above that. That's for sure.
Not above it, but it's not. Downchild basically is an original band. Huh?
Yeah.
We play mainly original music that like Flip Flop and Fly is a cover.
Right.
We do TV Mama, which is a cover, Caledonia, which is a cover, but everything else is original music.
No, good point. Unlike that hack Springsteen and his...
But his version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town is great.
It is great. No, Jake does. I noticed the deep voice. What is that called when you have the deep voice that Clarence would do? Goes right to Jake now, and I think they're putting an effect on the microphone to get him that low. Like, I think they're cheating a little bit because Jake, who's doing a great job, he doesn't quite have the gravitas, that voice that Clarence had.
Right. Well, Clarence had the guttural thing, as they call it. Right.
So is that scandalous when I break the news? They might be putting an effect on the microphone to get him a little deeper, to get more clarency. Is that scandalous?
No, if it's an EQ thing or a bit of an effect, he's still playing.
He's still doing all right. Pat Carey, honestly, what a great career for a great Canadian band. I'm sad that it's coming to an end, but it sounds like there's a few tickets left November 12th. So if you guys, and forget Taylor Swift, okay? On the aftermarket, pick up some of these tickets November 12 and 13 at Hughes Room Live. It's the end of an era, the farewell tour. The legendary Downchild Blues Band is calling it after 55 years, 19 albums, and countless awards. Pat, I love this chat. Thanks for chatting with me today.
You're more than welcome. And I just wanted to mention we're also in Hamilton on November the 28th. If people can't get to Hughes Room,
where's that? No.
At the where's the
okay, yeah. So I'm too quick to cut out here. Two things. So the Hammer is a short drive for somebody if they can't get tickets to Hughes Room. So yeah. What day is that Hammer performance?
That's the 28th of November. That's Thursday, I believe.
Will you get Tom Wilson on stage maybe for
Tom and Jesse O'Brien he's filled in with Downchild many times, and he's a very good friend.
I bet you Tom can get that Clarence voice going if you want to do Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and then, so Pat, so obviously this band will be coming to an end, but you're not hanging up the saxophone.
No.
So let's hear what's next for you personally now that the legendary Downchild, and I was told you have to say legendary, you can't just say Downchild Blues Band. That's fine. The legendary Downchild Blues Band comes to an end, but not Pat Carey is not coming to an end. So what are you going to be up to?
Well, Chuck Jackson and I he has a band called Chuck Jackson and the All Stars that's been working around Toronto since the early 90s at least, and we perform every Sunday at a place called Rockin' Docks in Port Credit in Mississauga, and gigs all over the place. The Maple Blues Band is still a going concern. I'll be playing with that band. The Hogtown All Stars, which is basically Downchild but with a different guitar player, that band will be recording and playing next year. So it's whatever comes up and whatever comes along.
Never a dull moment.
What's that?
I said never a dull moment for Pat Carey.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know Raoul and the Big Time. I perform with Raoul as well, and all kinds of bands.
You're a busy man there in Long Branch.
Try to be.
Well, thanks again for this. And
one band I want to mention as well is Andre Bisson out of Hamilton. I play with Andre quite often, and Andre's a singer, guitar player. It's all original music. 3-piece horn section, myself, Barry sax player, and Loretta Hill playing trumpet. That's a great band as well.
The only disappointment I have about this chat today is you didn't hum any jingles I might know that you were featured on.
I know. I would had to sing like George Oliver. That's pretty tough. So,
but I feel like if you did some jingles and stuff that would be aired on CBC or CTV or Global or whatever, there's got to be one. I mean, the one you mentioned, the Blue Mountain one, if I heard it, I probably would remember it because I remember 30 years ago, I listened to a lot of radio, watched a lot of TV 30 years ago. There was no internet. What was I going to do, Pat? But there's got to be one you can drop on me here.
No, that's the only one that comes to my mind. Oh. But most of my studio work has always been playing on people's CDs or that kind of thing. I mean, I remember doing jingles at Metalwork Studio in the 80s, but I couldn't tell you which ones they were, or, that kind of thing.